Among the hundreds of games that come out every year and the dozens that I personally play, it's super easy for things to be lost in the shuffle. You know, I'll play a game and enjoy it enough, but it doesn't leave this huge lasting impression on me. You know, it doesn't speak to me to the point where I would want to make one of these videos about it. Not all games do it for me in that way. But sometimes games come along that just super speak to me and really have something special going for them. And for me personally, Haven is absolutely one of those games. I just sort of stumbled upon Haven during a Steam sale and went in with literally no expectations, and it completely blindsided me. The merging of gameplay and story and some of the most realistic characters I've encountered throughout my many story-based games that I've played. I don't normally do spoiler warnings because I kind of hate them. I don't like having to tiptoe around details to save it for a specific spoiler section. But I implore you that if my simple recommendation is enough, check out Haven, because I'm about to pretty much spoil the entire thing. If you've already played it for yourself, or you just don't care, then we can actually get started. Also, there's not really any other place to slot this in where it would be more relevant, but I absolutely adore this opening that's been playing for this entire introduction segment. The entirety of Haven's story is centered around the couple of Yu and Kei, who are both meant to be in their early 20s. Before anything, you're given the option of which versions of Yu and Kei you want to play with. You can choose between a male Kei and female Yu, or have both as men or both as women. This is awesome. Haven is definitely a game where you're meant to identify with and relate to the characters, so it's great that anyone can choose a couple with which they identify. Unless they're aromantic, I guess, but it's still a great feature that I'm happy is here. I kinda wish that you could have a female K match with a male U, but it literally doesn't matter. The story is the exact same regardless of the main character's genders, with a few minor text changes. I played with the male and female couple, and I'll be referring to them with their respective pronouns, but you can choose whichever couple you like best for your own playthrough, and all of them are equally canon. Kei and Yu are living together in the Nest, a sort of combination living space and spaceship, although its engines were completely messed up when they landed on their current planet. After we're introduced to both of them, the Nest runs out of the flow that powers it. In Haven's universe, flow is basically an umbrella term for energy or power, and it's also what allows ships to travel in space. If there's not a flow bridge between planets, you're not getting on or off a planet. They go to collect more flow from the surrounding area where we get the movement tutorial. More movement options are unlocked later on, but for now the couple's hover boots allow them to ride on flow threads while collecting the flow that they need to power the nest. After you've gotten comfortable and collected the necessary flow, Kei and Yu return to the nest, but an uncomfortable subject comes up.
How long do you think this is gonna last?
The flow? Well, if we keep our consumption in check, I think a few days.
No, I meant us. Us here. How long until they come get us?
Do we have to talk about this?
We are going to need to at some point. We need to be prepared. We need a plan.
I'm planning on finishing my plate without hearing about the apiary. Is that okay?
Okay. Okay.
And FYI, you are the one that ruined the mood, not me.
The reason Kei and Yu are on this planet in the first place is because they're fleeing from the apiary. The apiary is basically a network of colonized planets where pretty much all of the society that we're aware of lives. The apiary uses the matchmaker system, which pairs up people for romantic relationships and basically forces them to be together. Essentially everyone has an arranged marriage without any room for picking other people. Kei and Yu were not matched with each other, but clearly they don't care, so they fled the apiary on the nest and have been there ever since. It's also notable that the planet they're on is partially shattered, and they're actually living on one of the floating fragments, so there aren't a ton of places that they can go without a properly working spaceship. The two go foraging for food the next morning before being interrupted by violent tremors on the fragment they're on. They're stranded from the nest, which is not in the best state right now. They decide to look around to find a way back, and it's not long before they can find a mini flow bridge, which allows them to travel between different fragments. They see some indigenous life with these cute little lizard guys, and they eventually come across this weird red stuff that Kei calls rust. It seems to be dissipated by the flow as their boots pass over them, and they can harvest small bits of it. They also encounter an abandoned building, seemingly from the apiary attempting to colonize it. The thing is, Kay worked at Exanova, the company responsible for most colonization, and he's never heard of this happening, thinking that the planet was completely uninhabited. This brings up a lot of questions, but there's no time to figure it out before we make it back to the nest. It's completely wrecked, as you could pretty much figure out. I love this scene, and I think it serves to really demonstrate how you and Kay support each other and their dynamic in general for the whole game.
Whoa. Whoa, 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 whoa. There is no way this thing is flying again.
Don't say that. You could make a rock fly with the right tools.
Well, maybe. But not this one. Both wings are wasted. The propellers were ripped off. And I'm not even done checking the inside.
We weren't really planning on leaving, were we? We don't really have another place to go anyway.
I'm tired. Why are we always so unlucky? Why are you laughing?
Hold on. We decide to escape the apiary, which apparently no one has managed to do before us. We punch in some coordinates really at random, only because some obscure document from Exanova vaguely attested to the existence of a habitable planet. By some kind of miracle, we cross the boundaries of the apiary without getting caught. We travel across space in a Class D ship that is totally not designed for that. And in spite of the fact that this is not all-terrain, we land without breaking anything. We find food and flow on site even though we hadn't really planned for it. Finally, we get hit with an earthquake, all right, but we get out of it unscathed. The only real consequence is that the nest is a little bit busted. And you think that we're unlucky? We are the luckiest people in the universe.
That's one way to see it.
This planet is our chance to start a new life. With our own rules. Away from the apiary, from the matchmaker and all that loot. And I'd rather endure 1,000 earthquakes than risk being away from you.
What did you say this planet was called again?
Source.
Source. The beginning of something.
Seems like it.
The next morning, they start figuring out how to fix the nest, starting with getting it out of the crevice it's in and getting it to a neutral angle. Unfortunately, the device U has for doing this drains all of its power before they can actually lift it. However, Kay has the idea to modify it with the rust that they found, since it reacts uniquely to flow. This ends up working, and they're able to achieve the first step to the next being fixed again, much less flying. So this is the main objective, collecting rust and finding bits of wreckage that you can use to repair the nest. With this, we're free to start exploring the fragments. They also find that the rust is actually corrupting and agitating the indigenous creatures and work to purify them, both to collect the rust and help the creature itself. It's through this purification that we enter combat for the first time. Yeah, Haven's actually an RPG, although it's one of the least traditional ones I've ever played. U and K have two different attacks they can do, Blast and Impact. The main difference between these is that certain enemies may be vulnerable to one more than the other. They can also shield, which halves the damage they take, as well as covering for the other character if they're attacked. After an enemy is knocked down, you can pacify them, removing the rust on them, but they'll get up if you don't do this quick enough. You give U and K commands simultaneously, and they need to work together to fight efficiently. I really like this combat system. It does a great job of emphasizing the bond between U and K. It's relatively simple, but I think that works well. Haven is like 10 hours long on a first playthrough. It's not meant to be this super long 70-hour RPG with really complicated mechanics. Trust me, I love games like that, but that's just not what Haven's going for, and I appreciate how it uses its uniqueness to tell its story. As you play through the game, you'll slowly build up the relationship between you and Kay, and this kind of serves as a stand-in for normal experience in an RPG. You do get a tiny little bit of relationship points from winning fights, but the primary source of it is cooking and viewing events. You can collect different ingredients while exploring, which can be cooked into a variety of things depending on which ingredients you mixed. This not only gives you points, but also serves to give you your main healing items. After eating or sleeping or some other transition, you'll usually view an event. These are little interactions between you and Kay, and they're all really good. Some of them reveal little insights to the player, like Kay being raised in a foster home, or that Yu's mom is actually the current president of Exanova, which will both be important later for the main story. There are also some that require finding an item somewhere on Source, and the event will be based around that item. There's stuff like a board game, a teapot, and a bunch of other random crap you find while you're exploring. I'm not gonna go into all of these, but my favorite events happen after Kay and you come across this beach while exploring Source. This is the only area like this being completely optional and having them switch into their swimsuits. There's events for sunbathing, finding a new food type, and one where they get to explore this cool underwater cave. This is crazy dangerous. Like, spelunking is crazy dangerous in real life. But they find this cool shell, so yeah, it's probably worth it. Later in the game, there's a follow-up event where Kay turns the shell into a guitar, since you mentioned earlier in the game that she used to play. Look, I don't think summarizing these events really do them justice, but it's just so nice seeing them spending time together, and it's clear how much they really do care about each other. Like I mentioned earlier, doing these events give you more relationship points, and enough of them cause you and Kay to level up. This both raises their HP and attack power, but it also unlocks things like the ability to do team blasts or team impacts. Like the main battle system, I think that this is exactly as complicated as it needs to be for a game like Haven. It serves its purpose without being too in-depth and distracting from the rest of the game. As you explore, you'll find more and more ruins of old houses, further proving that there was an attempt by the apiary to colonize Source. Eventually the couple finds this huge flow pump, but when they attempt to use it,
What's the matter?
It says system malfunction, error log sent.
Sent as in...
I don't know, Kay. Sent. Did we tattle on ourselves just now? If the apiary is receiving a message coming from Source, they're gonna know it's us.
Hold on. Can this thing really beam a signal all the way to the apiary? We're millions of lumsec away from the closest planet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I'm probably overreacting.
Until we figure it out, we probably shouldn't stay near this thing.
this is obviously really bad, but we don't really have anything we can do about it other than continuing to repair the nest. I love the exploration in Haven so much. It's not the most complicated thing ever, but I think it works really well. Like I mentioned earlier, exploration outside the nest mainly serves the purpose of collecting rust and finding nest parts, but there's plenty of other things you can find. There are the items I mentioned earlier for events, as well as collecting food for cooking. The food is incredibly plentiful, so it's not like there's any real resource management or anything, but it's still satisfying to collect. Food comes in two varieties, which I'll call basics and spices. Basics can be combined with basics and spices, while spices can only be combined with basics. You can use spices to make medicine in the nest, but you aren't able to use spices in cooking when you're camping outside. There are these little obelisks throughout Source which allow you to rest for the night, heal up, and cook. If you go long enough without eating, you and Kay become generally worse at combat, so it's pretty important to have them eat regularly unless you want the game to be significantly harder. There's also a set of conversations exclusive to these camping scenes, like the one I mentioned earlier about you playing guitar. Most other games would just have it fade to black and heal you, which is fine, it serves its purpose, but having these nighttime scenes adds a lot for me. There's a ton of little details between Kay and you that also add a lot to exploring. If the two are ever hovering next to each other, they'll start holding hands and won't let go until they go too far apart. If one character has significantly less HP than the other, they can give a healing hug, which brings them up to the higher number. This is super helpful, but also really cute. If you collect food, there's a chance of also getting a seed for that plant, which you can plant in the nest. This is cool in a gameplay sense, but you and Kay compete throughout the entire game to see who can find more seeds, and it's so fun to see them screw with each other and get mad when the other one takes the lead. I don't know, man, I just love hanging out with these two and seeing them genuinely enjoying each other's company. For me personally, a lot of love stories kind of come off as forced, but it honestly just feels like these are two people that enjoy being around each other. I've mentioned this quality before in the Pikmin video, but I just love the experience of exploring alien worlds so much. Just learning more about the world alongside the characters and seeing how everything on the planet interacts is so interesting to me. You've probably noticed this in the cutscenes I've shown, but it's also really fun to me that they have their own set of curse words. They sound a little silly, obviously, but I still think that they add a lot of charm. The only other game I've seen do something like this is Xenoblade 3, and I think it's a really fun way to characterize a world. And oh my god, the music. All of it is so ethereal and calming, and it fits the game perfectly. I've been playing it throughout, but go check it out if it sounds good to you, because it's pretty great. I honestly feel bad when I get to these parts of my videos, because I don't know enough about music, but the soundtrack is great. It's about the best I can give it, but trust me. After a while of exploring, eventually Hornet drones descend on U and K, these robot soldiers sent by the apiary to take them back. They're able to destroy them, but obviously it's a safe assumption that there are more coming for them. K figures that the Hornets must be receiving orders from a communications outpost somewhere on Source. They figure that they need to speak to someone at the apiary to figure out what's happening, both with the Hornets and with the colonization of Source. Unfortunately, the only person they can really call is the president of Exanova, Yu's mom. She's, of course, very apprehensive, but it's really their only way to figure out what's happening on the outside. They reach the communications outpost and are able to successfully make contact with Yu's mom.
Mom?
Arena listening.
Mom?
You? Is that you?
Yeah. Me and Kay.
Hello.
Where are you two? Are you doing okay?
We're on Source, and...
Oh no. Did you really make it to Source? You need to leave right away. The Council has ordered Hornet drones to be sent on your trail.
Yeah, we know that.
We have, taken care of it.
You are completely insane.
They started it!
It's even worse than I thought.
What? What is worse? Can you just tell me what's happening?
After you disappeared, the Council issued an advisory notice about you. That was a bad idea. People started to imagine things. That you might have managed to fall off the apiary's radar. That you might be starting a new life together in outer space against the decisions of the matchmaker.
And? That's pretty accurate.
That's the issue. You two have become a symbol. People are talking about following your lead. The Council cannot allow this to happen. And then there was this signal coming from a supposedly abandoned planet. Listen, you need to come home immediately. I can fix all of this. I can placate Lord Ozius.
What? Why Lord Ozius?
Because he's furious. What did you expect?
I don't understand.
Don't tell me that you're not aware.
Aware of what?
There are a lot of things we weren't aware of. Here's a random one. Source was colonized?
Yes, that is another issue. You weren't supposed to see that.
See what, exactly?
What have you seen?
Quit stalling. What happened on Source? Why aren't people aware of what happened in this colony? Why is everything deserted?
Okay. Yes, Exanova has contributed to the settlement of a colony on Source. At the time, I was only vice president. And no one knows because it happened differently. Rather than integrating the planet to the apiary, they decided to make a sort of an external colony.
What does that mean?
It means that they only came in to plunder the flow.
It's a little more complex than that.
Uh-huh.
But yes, broadly speaking, that's it. Exanova had just completed work on a new experimental power plant. Its drill could extract flow directly from the planet's core, then the flow was condensed to make transport easier.
Huh. That seems dangerous.
As long as the plant is properly maintained, it's safe.
And then?
The plant was not properly maintained. After about 30 years, the infrastructure started to age. The president of Exanova at the time figured that replacing it would be too costly. Well, you saw the end result.
The rust?
I'm sorry?
The rust. That red stuff. It's everywhere.
Oh, that. Sure, kind of. But what I meant was the explosion. The capacitor tank started to develop a crack. The flow became unstable, which triggered a chain reaction into the core, and...
Did you?
Hold on. You precipitated the explosion of an entire planet just for some flow?
It's an unfortunate chain of events, which...
And the people. The people who lived and worked on Source. What happened to them?
Most of them were evacuated, but some weren't so lucky. I would love to give you more details, but you don't have a lot of time. The Council has decided to make an example of you. If they catch you here, there's nothing I can do for you. But if you come back now, I could probably smooth things over. We'll match you up with your respective mates. We'll get you to read a disclaimer letter. We'll make something up. Everything will be back to normal.
What if we don't want it to be back to normal?
I understand your frustration. I remember my younger years, but you must also think about others in the long run. The matchmaker may not be the best system, but it's the least bad that we found. Do you want to go back to the days of the Mark? Recreate the inequalities that the Elders have worked so hard to erase? You really think you're much happier now? That's great. But your selfishness has already left 2 other people in the dust. So now, can you imagine if everyone did what you did?
Everyone would be happier.
Of course not. Sure, everyone loves to complain about the matchmaker every now and then. But everyone is a lot more scared of what the alternative might be. The matchmaker is a guarantee. It ensures what we are building together will not crumble beneath our feet. The promise of a future. Durable, everlasting. Can you say that you'll hold that promise?
Absolutely. We love each other.
But you will also love your mates. And they will love you back. Love does not have to be a large fire which consumes everything. You have to build it, you have to keep it alive. Just like the chimney fires in fairy tales which keep us warm in the winter. Isn't that kind of love at least as beautiful as yours?
Huh.
You. Have you ever in your life had to question the love that your mother and I had for each other? Was it any less than the one that you share?
No, but...
Love is greater and more complex than you can imagine. Love always finds a way. You will always find a way as well. We'll have to act fast to clean up your mess.
Our mess. What mess? Is love a mess? Living together, is that a mess?
You know very well that's not what I meant, Kay.
No, I do not. Come on, you. Let's go.
No, wait, you can't!
They're both really upset, understandably, and decide that they just want to return to the nest. As they're both trying to process everything that they've just learned, Kay brings up the Lord Ozius character mentioned by Arena.
There's still one thing I don't really understand. She mentioned Lord Ozius at one point. I don't understand what that Boran has to do with all this. He's too young to have been involved in the whole secret colony thing. I mean, sure, he's pretty tight with the council. But I still don't get how this is any of his business.
I think I know.
Oh yeah?
Do you promise you won't get mad?
What? Why would I get mad?
It's about the guy I was matched with.
Who cares about that guy, though?
Right. I mean...
Hold on. Are you telling me that Ozius is your partner? Ozius? The Ozius, Blood Hole in Chief.
The very one.
And you are telling me now?
You said you didn't care who my mate was.
Because I thought that it was some random person, not one of the most influential and demented people in the apiary. You never considered that I might find this tidbit to be important?
I was scared you would change your mind if I told you.
I might have changed my mind, yes. Fleeing the apiary is one thing. But Lord Ozius is a maniac. You humiliated him by refusing the match. He'll never give up on us.
I humiliated him? We left together in case you missed it.
He is your partner.
So it's my fault that I was matched up with a psychopath?
All I'm saying is that you could have told me. It's also a matter of establishing trust, you. You know, just 5 minutes ago you were complaining about your mom hiding stuff from you. But you're doing the exact same to me. Obviously, you got that from her.
Yeah. Well, I have no idea who you're taking after, but I understand why they no longer wanted you.
Wow. Seriously? Couldn't pick a better angle?
Oh, that's not what I meant.
Oh yeah? What did you mean then?
I don't know! You're raising your voice. I'll raise mine! It just came out!
Well, let me tell you that I'm quite shocked by what just came out. I thought I knew you better than this.
Go bloot yourself. You and your high horse. You should go back to the apiary if you're unhappy.
I may just do that.
Well, you have to figure out how to get there on your own, though. Don't count on me to be your chauffeur.
Oh, no problem. I wasn't about to ask you for anything.
Great!
Perfect.
Tensions are now incredibly high, and Yu isn't there when Kay wakes up the next morning. He goes looking for her with a bunch of tremors happening at the same time. When he eventually finds her at the communications outpost, the quakes have split the fragment, stranding Yu on the other side. I really love this short segment with Yu by herself. It really reinforces how vulnerable they are when they're alone and how important it is that they're together for survival, considering that you're going to have a huge amount of difficulty fighting enemies with only one character. During this segment, Yu finds this huge door that she can't open, but it'll be important later, so just keep it in mind. They are eventually able to meet up, and this scene is so cute. Just a really satisfying moment seeing them be able to be together again. Once they're reunited, they can go check out the big locked door, but it's still not opening. Until Kay notices that the necklace he's had on all game has the same symbol as the door. He tries it and the door opens, which obviously opens a ton of new questions. Kay has had the necklace as long as he can remember in his whole time in the foster home. Why he would have something like that from Source is completely unknown, but we can't really find the answer right now. Behind the door is the power plant that presumably caused Source to explode, surrounded by rust. It has a piece of pure rust inside which they take, but they can only keep moving forward. They eventually find a small hologram robot and we finally see Lord Ozius. He tries to convince Yu to be with him, but she of course refuses. He says he wants to bring Yu back peacefully, but that's clearly total bull since he then immediately tells them he's sending more Hornets and threatening to have them recalibrated. It was briefly mentioned earlier, but recalibration is basically wiping specific parts of someone's memory, in this case to forget a specific person. Yu and Kay thought that this was just a rumor, but this pretty much confirms it's real and is a very scary reality. This is obviously very upsetting for both of them, and they don't have any idea what they're gonna do when more Hornets come after them. That is until Kay suggests severing the giant flow bridge connecting Source to the rest of the solar system, so that no ships can get to them. Yu points out that they don't have the means to do that, since nothing they have can contain that type of energy, but they decide to keep it in mind. The final main area is completely covered in rust, and most of the creatures are super strong and aggressive. At the end is the massive flow bridge leaving Source, but they can't actually reach it on foot, so this is the point where the nest has to be repaired before you can continue making progress. Luckily, this is probably around when you're finding your last 2 or 3 nest parts, so it really isn't a big deal. We just don't have the means to actually sever the bridge yet. Eventually, Yu has the idea to modify their gauntlets with the hyper rust that they found earlier, since it has a huge near-limitless energy limit. Once the modified gloves are finished, all that's left is to fly the nest to the base of the flow bridge. This is the final segment of the game and the point of no return. If you take off in the nest, there's no going back. Once you arrive, they're separated from the flow bridge by molten rust, which is going to be pretty dangerous to get through. This, understandably, makes Yu really apprehensive, but Kay gives her the courage to keep moving. They make it most of the way through the rust, but Kay ends up in one of the way of the bursts, with Yu pushing him out of the way. This leaves her very horribly scarred, but she insists that they keep going. Who gets burnt here is actually dependent on who has the higher courage, which is a value that raises depending on the dialogue choices you make in cutscenes. In my first playthrough, it was actually Kay that got burned, but who it is doesn't majorly change the story. They press on and are eventually able to sever the bridge. We can see the link between Source and the apiary being cut off, so they're definitely safe from Ozius and the Hornets. When they're back at the nest, they start to notice that Source is beginning to shift in its orbit, which is definitely worrying. But hey, they're safe with each other. Of course, Yu or Kay is horribly scarred by the rust, but we do get a really sweet scene of whoever didn't get burned comforting them and saying that they still love them, so I guess it's alright. And that's how Haven ends. Of course, things are still very up in the air as far as their future, but it's relatively happy. However, that's only one way that things can turn out. This is dependent on your dialogue choices during the final stretch. Before going into the molten rust, you can convince Kay not to do it, considering that severing the flow bridge means that they can never leave the planet again. They decide to leave the path open and face the Hornets together. After this, the second ending scene plays, and they sit in the nest awaiting the Hornets, which indeed come. And they lose. We're shown scenes of the nest destroyed both inside and out. Kay and Yu get recalibrated, completely erasing their memory of each other. Kay is matched with his partner and is shown to have had a child with her. Yu is shown to be with Lord Osius, looking out at our only real view of the apiary. Their expressions look kind of content to me, but that's also contentment achieved through tearing them apart and wiping parts of their memory. I'm gonna be real. This ending messed me up. I didn't know that this ending existed until this playthrough I did for footage, and it completely blindsided me. I felt weird for like 3 days. I normally start writing these scripts immediately after I'm done recording footage while everything's fresh in my mind, but like, I didn't even have all of my thoughts together to write the script for a while. It's so tragic seeing all of their efforts be in vain, the nest we worked so hard to fix being completely totaled, and them being torn apart from each other. This image of you getting recalibrated is so genuinely disturbing to me. But I can't even label this as the definitively worst ending. Obviously it's awful, but the other ending isn't that much better. Sure, it seems happy, and Yu and Kay will get to be with each other for the rest of their lives, but we have no idea how long those lives are actually going to be. One of them has horrible scars from the rust, which could very well have lasting repercussions that we don't know about. Even with the flow bridge gone, a chunk of Source is still shattered, and there's still rust everywhere. And worst of all is that severing the flow bridge took Source out of orbit. You might know this, but a planet's distance from its star is very important and very specific. Depending on how quickly it leaves orbit, Source could leave the habitable zone within a matter of years, or months. True love isn't going to do a lot when the planet freezes or catches on fire. At least with the other ending, Yu and Kay are still alive and presumably can still see their old family and friends. Obviously this is against their will, but at the very least they probably don't remember how traumatizing recalibration is. Kay will probably be fine, but Yu is still with Osius. He's stated several times in the game to be a sociopath, and she's still forced to live with someone like that. Regardless of the ending, Haven still ends really tragically, and I kind of like it in a bittersweet way. Not every game can end with a fairy tale ending, and I think sometimes tragic endings like this really serve to reinforce some of the game's themes. For a story-focused game like this, having only 2 real characters is a pretty bold choice. Osius and Arena get 1 scene each, which both do a great job of characterizing them, but for the most part, Yu and Kay are the only speaking characters in the game. Luckily, I think they're both really well written and enjoyable characters. I think that they have such a great dynamic with each other and bounce off of each other really well. Kay is definitely the voice of reason between them, and even though he still gets mad and sad and stuff, he's usually the one that's able to cheer up Yu when she needs it. He's also usually the one offering solutions when things seem really bad. In one of the campfire events, it's revealed that Kay's parents were most likely part of the settlers on Source. When the planet was evacuating after the explosion, it seems that Kay was the only one of his family actually able to get off the planet, which probably means that Kay's necklace was given to him by one of his parents. After this realization, the roles completely shift between them, and it's up to Yu to comfort Kay during all of this. I love this little side moment a lot. Even though Kay is usually the more level-headed one, sometimes he still needs support, and Yu is of course ready and willing to give it. He was a biologist back on the apiary, so he's usually the one with knowledge on plants and animals, even the ones on Source that are completely unknown to him. It was actually through being a biologist and working at Exanova that he met Yu, since he knew Arena and met Yu through her. Kinda backfired on her in the long run. Yu is the exact opposite of Kay in a lot of ways. She grew up with 2 loving parents compared to Kay being in the foster system. She's also an engineer and super familiar with machines, acting in contrast to Kay mostly working with the natural world. She's the one that does all the work on the nest, and she's usually the one that keeps Kay down to earth, pointing out if he's overthinking a situation. One really small aspect of Yu's character that I like is her feeling partially responsible for the fate of Kay's parents. Yu's mom was aware of the colonization on Source and complacent in it, even though she was only vice president of Exanova at the time. Even if she wasn't directly responsible, she still, of course, feels guilty that her mom was partially responsible. I know for a fact that Kay doesn't blame her because he's just not that type of character, but I can't imagine that completely gets rid of all the guilt that Yu feels. Although I guess it doesn't matter if they get recalibrated anyway. I also find her relationship with Ozius really interesting. We know that a part of the matchmaker's job is finding people who are compatible with each other. With what little we know about Kay's mate, it's clear that they are meant to share similar interests and backgrounds. Ozius mentioned this himself, pointing out how similar their upbringings are. It's unclear whether Yu rejected Ozius purely because he's crazy and a sociopath, or if it was partially because she had already met Kay at the time. Kay had apparently not even looked at his mate's profile because he'd already met Yu, but whether or not she had already met Ozius is unclear. It seems pretty clear that Yu and Kay are meant to be in their early 20s, but we don't know if they're actually the same age. We don't even really know if you get matched at a specific age. Point is, it's interesting that two people who were completely compatible in theory can be so much the opposite. That is under the assumption that Ozius didn't use his authority to manipulate the matchmaking, which is sort of hinted at, but we don't know for sure. I really like how little we actually know about the apiary. There are exactly 2 actual images of apiary, shown during the ending, which really only tells us that, like, yeah, it's futuristic, which I feel could probably be inferred. I think the mystery behind it causes the story and lore to be significantly more interesting than if we had just gotten this huge lore dump at one point. It's mentioned by Arena that the matchmaker system was put in place to combat something called the Mark. This is literally only mentioned here, but from looking online, it's apparently some kind of recessive genetic mutation, and people are specifically paired so that it can't pass on. One would think that it would only take a few generations of doing this, but it could be more complicated than that. Like most things, we don't know. It seems that citizens of the apiary have pretty substantial freedom outside of choosing their lover, because Yu and Kay never mentioned being forced to learn about mechanics or biology, so it can pretty much be inferred that you can choose your career. It's possible I'm wrong, but I feel they would have mentioned it if it was meant to be relevant, so I think that they have pretty significant freedom. I don't think it takes a degree in narrative analysis, if that's even something you can get a degree in, to make the connection that Haven is meant to be an allegory for the persecution of same-sex couples and queer couples in general. Also, I haven't said this in any of my other videos, as this is the first game I've talked about that kind of deals with this sort of subject matter, but I'm just going to make my stance clear. If you get mad about diversity existing in games and would complain about something like Haven being quote-unquote woke, please, don't watch my videos. Educate yourself or find something else to watch. I'm not gonna debate with bigots. Anyway, I think the game makes it clear that actual same-sex couples don't face persecution within the in-game universe. It's explicitly stated that Yu has 2 moms, and Kay will still have a female partner regardless of them being male or female. Also, Ozius is perfectly capable of being with a male Yu, and if anyone was going to be bigoted in this game, it's probably him. But this does bring up quite a few questions. If people were initially paired up to stop a genetic disease, then logically they would be paired up with the intention of them having children without that recessive mutation. Considering that Yu clearly resembles Arena, and the fact that Kay's kid will resemble them regardless of if they're male or female, I don't think it's a stretch to say that same-sex couples in the apiary are able to reproduce, whether through modern medical science or just their anatomy being very different from ours. Yu makes an offhand comment about periods at one point, which gives some indication that girls at least have ovaries, so I'm more inclined to believe it's through medical science. My point with all of this is that I find it interesting how much Haven mirrors our real world. Same-sex couples here are fine, but who you are actually with is out of your control, while for a lot of people in the real world it's the opposite. Of course, it's taking the stance that you should fight for your love, which, yeah, very epic. But I think it goes a bit further with the concept than some other things do. By running away from the apiary, they aren't just leaving their family or friends behind, they're leaving all of developed society. Yu and Kay are literally the only people on Source that we know of, and if they sever the flow bridge, they will be the only ones ever on it. It has to take a supremely deep love for someone to make that kind of sacrifice. But if you found someone that you can have that deep of a connection, maybe you don't need anyone else. fighting against society for love isn't a new idea by any means in video games or any other media, but I think Haven does a great job with its own take on it. I love Haven a lot. I feel fortunate to have stumbled across it because it's really been something that's stuck in my mind since I first played it. I really hope that this video has been able to show people why I think that this game is so special, particularly the story, even though everything else is also awesome. I know it probably doesn't resonate with everyone, but the way it conveys its story and characters is just so endearing and enjoyable for me. As much as I love it, I don't think it really warrants a sequel. Sometimes games just don't need them. Haven is like 10-ish hours on a first playthrough, like I said earlier, and I think it uses every minute to its fullest, and it doesn't feel too long or short at all. It told the story it wanted to in the time it wanted to, and I don't think a sequel is needed. For one thing, it would probably need to canonize one of the endings, and I feel like whichever one they would pick would really take all the impact from the other one. Like, if I know that they severed the flow bridge, then I know that they didn't actually get recalibrated, and that absolute gut punch of an ending would mean a lot less. And I don't know how they would make a new story with U and K recalibrated in that ending. Having new characters would be cool, but I feel like it would be difficult to not retread on a lot of plot beats. I also think that if there was a sequel to Haven, the natural direction to take it would be to expand on the apiary, which I really don't want them to do. Like I said, all of the intrigue from the apiary comes from how we literally never see it and only hear about it in dialogue. It would probably be cool to expand the world, but removing that intrigue makes theorizing about it a lot less interesting to me. If you've gotten this far, one, thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. I haven't even started editing, and I've been yapping for 30 minutes, so thank you for watching. And two, I have super spoiled this whole game. But I still implore you to check it out if you're interested. There's a ton of little events that I didn't talk about, and the gameplay is still satisfying independent of that, not to mention that, again, the soundtrack goes crazy. It's one of those games where even if you know what's going to happen, the moment-to-moment dialogue is still charming and well written enough to make it enjoyable. I hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff. This is my first time doing a game with a very significant amount of cutscenes, so let me know what you thought. I thought splicing in clips helped to get you more immersed and build tension than me exclusively summarizing things, but maybe you hated it, I don't know. See you guys next time. It's time for the unscripted end card. Funny story, I've had the gameplay recording and audio recording and script for this video done for like 10 months. Why is the video done now? Well, I recorded all of the gameplay footage in way too high of quality, and by way too high I mean 1080p 60, which isn't that high. And then when I tried to edit the actual video in DaVinci Resolve, it just lagged and wouldn't function, assumedly because the video quality was too high. So I couldn't do anything about it, and I was like, oh, my processor isn't good enough. So I replaced my processor, and that just didn't work. So I was just angry about it, and then did 2 semesters of college with the nagging thought in my brain of having 10 hours of wasted Haven footage and like 15 hours of wasted Wind Waker HD footage. There's a little preview. I'm probably gonna make a Wind Waker HD video. Anyway, but I'm back now because I switched to Adobe Premiere Pro, and for some reason that's so radically different from DaVinci that it just works. So I'm gonna make videos again, and it's summertime, so I'm gonna try to get cranking on that. Next video is probably gonna be Pokemon Gen 2, so that's gonna be fun because I hate those games. So it'll be fun ranting. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Check out some of my other ones. They're more than 10 months old now, but I still like most of them. So see ya.